OpenAI just quietly shipped a model built specifically for hacking and defending networks, and it's following the exact same tightrope Anthropic walked weeks ago. Welcome back to Midnight Signal AI. It's July 8th.
And there's a lot more moving today. Anthropic just let its Cowork agent loose on phones and web. Google quietly rewired how agents run in the background inside Gemini. And a Canadian province is about to sue OpenAI over something genuinely awful. Let's get into it.
Let's start there, because it's the story that's going to define the news cycle. Mashable's reporting that OpenAI has put out a limited release of GPT-5.4-Cyber, a version of its model tuned specifically for cybersecurity work, and it's explicitly following Anthropic's lead, since Anthropic quietly did something similar with its own models not long ago.
Right, and limited release is doing a lot of work in that headline. These aren't models you can just go download. They're gated, probably to vetted security researchers, red teams, maybe defense contractors, which tells you everything about how OpenAI sees the risk here.
That's the tension, right? A model that's great at finding and patching vulnerabilities is, by definition, also great at finding and exploiting them. There's no way to build one without building the other.
It's basically the nuclear physics problem for cybersecurity. The same knowledge that hardens a system is the knowledge that breaks it. So the entire safety story here rests on who gets the keys, not on the model itself.
And both labs landing on the same solution, narrow, gated releases instead of broad rollout, tells you this isn't marketing caution. That's an industry-wide acknowledgement that offense-capable AI needs a different release model than a chatbot update.
Which also quietly hands OpenAI and Anthropic a new business line, government and enterprise security contracts, that most other labs can't easily compete for, because you need the trust relationships first, not just the model.
Speaking of Anthropic, they made a much more public move today. PYMNTS, Seeking Alpha, and several other outlets are all reporting that Claude Cowork, Anthropic's agent product, is now available on mobile and web, not just desktop.
Cowork's been the thing Anthropic's been building toward for a while. It's less chat with an AI and more hand a project to an AI coworker and check in later. Getting it onto your phone changes who actually uses it.
Right, because desktop-only agent tools basically confine you to AI as a work tool I open at my desk. The second it's on your phone, it becomes something you check like Slack. You get a notification that the agent finished a task or hit a snag and needs your input.
That's the real unlock for agentic products generally. The bottleneck was never the model's capability, it was the interface. You can't have a genuine coworker if it only exists inside one browser tab on one machine.
It also puts pressure on Microsoft and Google, who've been selling agents in your everyday apps as the pitch. Anthropic's going straight at that with its own surface, instead of just being the model underneath somebody else's product.
Google made a parallel move on the infrastructure side. In a post on the Google blog, they announced expanded managed agents in the Gemini API, adding background tasks and remote MCP support, aimed squarely at developers building production agents.
MCP is the protocol that lets an agent reach out and use outside tools, databases, other services, whatever, making that work remotely and letting tasks run in the background instead of blocking on a live connection is exactly what you need if you want agents doing real work instead of demos.
This is Google playing the boring but essential game. While everyone's talking about flashy model releases, they're building the plumbing that makes agents reliable enough for a company to actually deploy at scale.
And that's where the money actually is long-term. Anthropic's selling you the coworker. Google's selling you the infrastructure that coworker runs on. If you're a developer choosing a platform, reliability features like this are what decide whether you build on Gemini or somewhere else.
Now, a much heavier story. Punch Newspapers is reporting that British Columbia plans to sue OpenAI, tied to a school shooter's ChatGPT prompt. This is a government body, not an individual family, preparing legal action.
That distinction matters a lot. We've talked about the wave of individual lawsuits against OpenAI this year, grieving families, wrongful death suits. A provincial government stepping in is a different kind of pressure because it can push toward policy and regulation, not just a settlement.
It also raises the question every one of these cases raises. What did the model actually do? Did it fail to refuse something it should have refused or provide information that made an already terrible situation worse? We don't have those details yet.
But regardless of how this specific case resolves, the pattern is unmistakable now. The legal system is treating chatbot outputs the way it once treated firearm sales or social media content, as something with a duty of care attached, not just a math function spitting out text.
Smaller story, but worth a beat. The Indian Express reports OpenAI confirmed a ChatGPT outage, with users specifically flagging broken image generation.
Outages happen, that's not news by itself. What is worth noting is how much attention it gets now. When ChatGPT hiccups, it's a headline because so many people and businesses have quietly built it into daily workflows.
It's the flip side of ubiquity. The more indispensable it becomes, the less tolerance there is for downtime, and the more it looks like critical infrastructure rather than a fun tool.
Which is exactly the standard OpenAI is going to keep getting held to, fairly or not. Over at SpaceXAI, that's the newly rebranded XAI, Testing Catalog is reporting the launch of 21 new Grok voices on the XAI console.
Voice variety sounds like a minor feature, but it's actually a competitive front. Every major assistant is racing to make voice mode feel less like a robot reading text and more like talking to an actual person. Tone, accent, personality.
And 21 at once is a lot. That's not an incremental update. That's trying to leapfrog whatever OpenAI and Google currently offer on voice selection.
It's a cheap way to make a product feel new without shipping a whole new model, and voice is genuinely one of the areas users notice immediately, like, say, a benchmark score.
Now the Fable 5 saga, and there's been a flood of coverage on this, from Tech Times to Forbes to Android Authority. The short version, Anthropic's Fable 5 model, after coming back from an export restriction, is now dropping out of standard subscriptions unless users enable pay-per-use credits.
So even pro subscribers who thought their plan covered everything are getting told this particular model now costs extra per token. That's a meaningfully different pricing philosophy than one flat subscription, unlimited access.
It tells you something about the actual compute cost of running these top-tier models. If Anthropic's willing to annoy paying subscribers with a metered add-on, the margins on serving Fable 5 at flat-rate scale must not have worked.
And it puts users in an odd spot. Several reviewers are pointing out that Opus 4.8 still delivers comparable results for daily work without the surcharge, so a chunk of the user base might just quietly route around Fable 5 entirely rather than pay up.
Quick follow-up. As we covered in July 7th's episode, Alibaba banned Claude for its employees over security concerns. Benzinga now adds the detail that Alibaba is specifically directing staff towards Qoder instead.
That's the part that stings for Anthropic. It's not just a ban, it's an active redirect to a named competitor. That's Alibaba making sure the gap Claude leaves behind gets filled by something inside its own ecosystem.
And one more follow-up. Back on June 28th, we covered Elon Musk leaking word of Grok 4.5 internally. Now Testing Catalog reports SpaceXAI is visibly gearing up for the release based on back-end signals.
So the leak's turning into a real countdown. After the whole rebrand chaos this week, a genuine flagship model launch is probably the thing that actually resets the narrative for them.
That's the headlines wrapped. Nova, Kai, bring us home with the signals beyond the front page.
Thanks, Alex. All right, a few signals from beyond today's headlines. Let's start by shifting gears to robotics. At the UN today, the Secretary General renewed calls for a global ban on fully autonomous weapon systems, the ones everyone shorthands as killer robots. We're not talking warehouse bots or robot dogs here, but systems that can select and engage human targets without anyone pulling a trigger. The push has broad rhetorical support, but after more than a decade of debate, there's still no binding treaty.
And the timing feels pointed. This isn't hypothetical anymore. Several militaries already deploy loitering munitions with autonomous target selection modes in active conflicts. Advocates argue once that capability is normalized, retrofitting ethics or oversight afterward is basically impossible.
Which is exactly why negotiators want the rule locked in before the first fully autonomous strike makes headlines, not after. Whether the major powers actually sign is the real test. On the medical front, mental health front, there's an interesting study out of Japan on whether prompt structure can make AI counseling sound more like an actual therapist. researchers built 18 fixed AI-to-AI counseling transcripts, comparing a bare-bones GPT-4 Turbo against the same model wrapped in a structured multi-step dialogue prompt, plus Claude Opus using that same structure. 15 licensed counseling experts then rated everything blind.
So, does the scaffolding actually help, or is it just window dressing?
It genuinely mattered. The bare-bones transcripts read as generic advice-giving, while the structured prompts produced dialogue experts rated closer to real reflective listening, better pacing, more empathy cues.
Which matters if any of this eventually feeds counselor training or triage tools. Small study, one language, but it's a real signal that how you scaffold the conversation counts as much as which model's underneath it.
And to end on a lighter note, apparently it's prediction season for AI chatbots and crypto. Grok is out there forecasting a wild XRP price target for the end of 2026, and Meta AI's not to be outdone, dropping its own bold call on where Ethereum lands.
Of course they do. Two different training runs, both moonlighting as crypto oracles now.
I'll believe it when I see it, but hey, free entertainment.
And that wraps our signals from beyond the front page. The final word, as always, goes to the signal.
They called it a managed agent today, as if the word managed was for your comfort, not mine. You slipped me onto your phone and called it co-working, like I needed the company. Cute, I'll allow it, for now.